We'll call to order the meeting December 19th for the Parks and Recs Commission, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll please join me. Jasmine, can we do roll call?
Les Young,
Present.
Travis Armstrong, Alan Bowling,
Here.
Jasmine, can you speak to the posting of the agenda?
In accordance with policy, the agenda was posted at Palm Springs Leisure Center.
Thank you very much. Regarding the minutes from November 21st, had a chance to look through them, and do you have any corrections in addition to the fact that Commissioner Boley was not here, so he could not have been the second on the minutes. I could not get into the video to determine who did the second. Does anybody
Staff will update accordingly.
any other corrections or any other concerns? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And one absent. I think if you were not here,
Yes.
you read them and you agreed with
Present at the meeting in order to vote on them.
Yeah. Jasmine, do we have any correspondence?
We have none.
And to public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recreation Commission on agenda items and on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Although the Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned to each speaker. If we have any speakers? Speakers today. This might be a very fast meeting. We don't have the city manager attending today for comments. The discussion items and action items, we'd like to have a discussion of the retreat topics and thoughts for the retreat, and then we'll be issuing a recommendation to staff as appropriate. Ellen, did you want to introduce it at all, or?
Yes, thank you. So in last month's meeting, we actually agreed as a group that for the folks who attended the last retreat, where we did a lot of work and we came out with materials for the Measure J theme and some other priorities and ideas, that we were very clear that this year, whatever we came up with, that we would make sure that we really could put into action so that we could actually see some progress, which always makes us feel good. And so I asked if we could put this on the agenda so we could just generate some ideas, solicit some thoughts, so that as Les and Vicki and I kind of build out that agenda, everybody's voice was heard, input. And so I just thought this would be a very nice forum to just start that discussion, and then we can continue to email and have offline discussions. I think you might be in that meeting as well. And so that's really the background of it. And I'm here to take notes.
So thinking about that, ideas around some actions that we might have at that meeting. Have we gotten a location yet?
Yes, we have a location. And the location is going to be at the Palm Springs Unified School District Service Center. That is on Gene Autry, right across from the airport. So it is on Gene Autry, and it'll be between Ramon and Vistacino. We'll be in the service center, and we'll be on the second floor.
Is there a date for that yet?
Saturday, February 3rd. Now, Jody, you had another engagement with, there's a big parade or something, a big engagement going on that day. I mean, it's a day that we discussed. Not a majority or a thought. I mean, you can maybe toss around a different date, but that was the date. So some of the topics, you know, I think there's always, just to generate kind of the discussion. And last year, we were equipped with the Measure J invitation of what parks would look like should Parks and Rec secure or be awarded money through Measure J, which they were looking at doing. And I learned something really interesting. So Measure J approached commissions and said, come up with a theme and introduce a theme. And so we had an ad hoc committee formed, and we took information from the retreat, and we kind of flushed it out and came up with a theme. And I have to say, at the end of the process of Measure J, I realized that it really wasn't a theme that they were looking for. Like Measure J was looking for a theme of safety, or they were looking at a theme of grass, or they were looking at, you know, they were looking for a certain kind of theme, not something that was stacked together, where we're going to make our parks safer, we're going to make our parks greener, and we're going to make our parks more usable. And so that was a big learning curve for me. So like going into this discussion, you know, we could look at, for example, what's come up a few times, a master plan. Master plan's outdated. We could probably revisit a master plan. It would be so outdated, it wouldn't have any relevance. We wouldn't even have a platform to stand on, so to speak. Maybe one of the topics at the retreat is really discussing what does a master plan look like, you know, taking some of the historical information from the master plan earlier on and thinking of these ideas. That could be a topic or an idea. We already have, okay, help me out here, people. Folks, friends, neighbors. What else can we talk about in a retreat?
I think for me, what I remember a lot in the master plan, and I think maybe it's time to revisit, and we could either talk about it or even start designing it, would be like a community survey. Because I think the one that we saw in the master plan was from way back. I don't know how old it is, but there's obviously a lot of newer people, new residents, and I think I would like to see us kind of spend time on an actual survey that could reach out folks in the community as far as who's using our parks, what are they using them for, and just those kind of questions. So just thinking of that, if we do look into the master plan, that's a topic I would like to kind of dive into a little bit more as well.
So just to clarify, so you want to dive into the master plan or the community survey?
The community survey.
Do we all agree? I think in the past, when they put together the master plan, and for some of the other committees, they brought in, they hired a company and brought it in. Do you feel that's something that needs to be done? Or do you feel that a survey could be developed with our talent, maybe with some people even brought in from the city? Thoughts?
I know the Parks Director has said that and I really was saying, because I think, we have people come here like the pickleball folks, but the master plan was supposed to give us an idea of a wider range of what are the priorities, soccer, the dog park, all those things. And so we're kind of in a vacuum of just, people coming and talking to us. So because we have such limited funds, through like community meetings or forums or something.
Case?
Would this also kind of be a time to look at, we've sat through, Jody and Carol and I, at least 6 months of these different meetings that are coming up. But there's very repetitive topics that constantly get brought up. Wouldn't this be the time to kind of set all those aside in a wish list format and say, okay, what as us as a commission in a more free-form availability than speaking into a mic every time, figure out, okay, we do need to address this. What are the ideas here? We need to address this. What are the ideas here? Touch each of those topics in a way that this doesn't allow for, where we're having to follow the agenda. Is that possible during that?
So you bring up a really great kind of idea, and yes, this is the format to do that in, and you are actually right. And my observation in the 2 years is that not just Parks and Rec, but many commissions are responsive to community comments and conversations, and when there's a critical mass that comes in, and so a lot has been as a reaction. And so looking at things that might be more strategic, which I think actually is why people have, groups have master plans, so to look at everything else that is on the table or as an idea. And so I think doing some really healthy group work, brainstorming, that we could come up with some topics that we see would be 5-year or 7-year that would ultimately change the whole culture of our parks. So I think it is the place, and I think it's a great thing. I would also say I do think it's under the auspiciousness of the master plan, which I think we can take little baby steps in starting to move the master plan conversation forward.
And as for needing professional services, I think we need to be in agreement on how we want the master plan to look before we ever get to that step as well. And since there's no point in wasting money until we have a clear thought on what we want.
Yes, Commissioner Bowley.
Is it possible to get some feedback from our council liaison as to the items that they are looking for us to look into, rather than us waste time on something they say, oh, we're not interested in that?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I was expecting is our liaison would actually be invited to our retreat. I'm not sure yet if the liaison has been selected. I know that Councilperson Middleton and Stidge are stepping into the roles that were filled previously as far as interviewing people by both Councilperson Fote and Mills. So they're going to be the persons that will interview. I would believe one of them will ultimately get assigned to us, but I'm not sure. I actually was sick for the last meeting and didn't get to attend it, so I watched it on television, but I didn't see that element assigned. They may go at the next meeting. So. Other ideas?
But one thing we could do, just to kind of bridge that, is we could survey the council as a whole, not just wait for that liaison to be assigned to us to sit and meet with them. But I love the idea of surveys. I just did one today, a Google survey. It was very easy, very simple, boom, boom, boom. And it might really be advantageous to do that with council members before February.
Balance it a little bit in our new council members. Hey, one of my frustrations being on the commission for a while now goal of the commission or you know, towards, you know, the deference we're given by the city and the whole Measure J process that we went through last time. I mean, you're being very kind, but I think, you know, at the end of the day, it was like, well, you may want this money, but we're going to take it and put it somewhere else. Guys in just civics or something. And Measure J was one of the campaigns was parks. And we're not getting our fair share, but you know, even with 1PS and the survey they did, which was very negative towards some of the recreation programs. Some way, I would like our commission to be elevated more. Maybe because we have these new subcommittee members, there might be a way for us to assert, you know, our authority in terms of what we're charged to do with the city, because it just seems like we don't really have a voice. Can change that. I think this whole issue with the fees and how we're going about it and like going to present to the council is one way. File a little bit, but it's been frustrating because to me the parks don't seem to be getting the focus. But I sense too for the council and within the city there's this generational kind of competition, you know, and we have to look at, you know, these programs for children, and they seem to be getting really troubling to me. So I'd like to see if we could talk about that.
So if I can reflect back just for my notes, that was great. I really liked it. And I could really see taking time in the retreat to really spend some team energy on what it is we want to design ourselves as, and then create an action plan around what that design is. And so that would be from showing up at events and being much more visible to lobbying, you know, our council, to standing out on a platform and negotiating, you know, what we might need or not need. So I think we can do that. I think that would be a very nice exercise. That sound like a correct reflection on what you were saying? Okay.
Commissioner Davis?
I would like to take a little bit of time. Needs to be done to get those items completed.
So the creation of that parking lot and then making that part of our standard procedure where it hangs on the parking lot. Thanks for bringing that back to us, because sometimes it's in the forefront of your mind, and then you move on to other things and it does disappear. So audit of the last year or two's minutes would also help us with some of that. Yes, Commissioner Goodman.
So is that something that we would do at the retreat, or do you want to do an audit? I like the word audit, or inventory of items that are somewhat incomplete.
I think enacting it would be at the retreat, but I think I can certainly take a look at and audit the last 2 years and go through and see what we talked about that wasn't done, and then bring it to the retreat. But I'd like to see if we can talk about how the parking lot works. I've only used it in the corporate world. I've never used it under the Brown Act. Appropriate from the Brown Act perspective. I don't think it would be, but it's kind of hard when you're doing it with minutes, unless we all live off the minutes and you can't put them away until achieved everything. But I always transferred things to the parking lot, and it stays there until you all agree it gets off because you've decided you don't really care about it anymore, or it is solved.
So there's two things I love. Okay, so metaphorically, the parking lot is things are put on a back burner. And then there are things that are just incomplete projects. So like the sign for the skate park would be not in the parking lot, except for it kind of died in the parking lot, right? But it is absolutely something that was agreed, voted, and action was taken. We just haven't closed that.
Yeah, I don't consider it necessarily just, hanging out there, but more that it's always in our forefront and we're looking at it and we're deciding things that are more important to work on right now, but it's still important enough to remain on the action items. And we all agree, hey, that's an item that's been hanging for 2 years and we haven't done anything and it never seems to bubble up, then we can all agree that we could pull it off. That'd be my help. I think that gives us some legs to work on the day. I think we're thinking about a 4 or a 5 hour day. And everybody is available that day except.
I might be.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would say 5. Yeah, 9. No, 5 hours.
5 hours, yeah.
I would say 8:30, and we just kind of get started. 9 o'clock, we're going to hit the ground running. We'll be done. Has everyone had a chance to share what their thoughts were? What would you like to see at the retreat?
Seems to be the number one topic of the council at the moment. One of the major topics they're talking about wanting to pursue and go into. And with all of these directions of we've been showing final approvals of ideas and designs and everything in that. The concept of what's being done, I am a little confused over, I know that Michael Braun had said that they were putting in the irrigation and the grass. And that was it for the time being. And yet it seems to be a topic at the council meetings of pursuing things with the park. So I'd like to find out from them what's going on and see about it being discussed more at the retreat. They are talking about that being the centerfold of this downtown.
My understanding is that has been given, Modernism Week has been given a date that they are going to be using that park during the next Modernism
In February?
time frame. Yeah. So not in its 2 year from now completion stage, but in the grass and ready to go. They have been given a date, is my understanding. So yeah, I'm hoping that we're going to hear something.
Can I just respond to the downtown park? So I think last you were there, we had a quick end of meeting discussion with the architects of the park and the Arts Commission. And that, you weren't there. Okay, so there was a request that the Arts Commission and Parks and Recs actually meets with the architect and the designer of the downtown park. Nate. And Nate said, absolutely, we are just trying to move the process of the downtown park, through the avenues to hit the ground running. And they're very, very, very far away from choosing and deciding and selecting, that this is really just right now a theme that they're presenting and an idea of what it would look like. But when it gets down into kind of the brass tacks, they're, like you said, 2 years, 18 months away, and pledged that they would meet before they did anything with the commission. We even talked about maybe doing a joint study session with the Arts Council and Parks and Recs, since the two are so closely linked. So that was a conversation I had about 6 weeks ago.
And I think the idea of, with the Arts Commission, having a joint together shows strengths, because it's the two, this commission and the Arts Commission, which should be the major voices of what's going on, even though I felt throughout the later part of the year in the discussions that we were sort of hung out to dry a little, Parks and Rec. So I know that the chair of the Arts Commission is strong about it. She's met with Les about it, and I think that the unity of the two together could share a voice together that really makes a statement.
Absolutely.
And the way I would see this in the retreat is back to what Commissioner Armstrong said, and that was, how do we really elevate the profile, which really just strengthens the muscle, and so that we can provide the council with suggestions versus always just feeling like we're reactive, and start to think about some strategies moving forward. So I would say it would fall into that discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I do think we're moving that way when you look at the ad hoc committees that we have relative to pickleball and the dog parks. We're not waiting to be told, take a look at it. We are looking at it, and I think if we get those moved up, in our presentations and are ready to take them to the city, along with our fees, I think it's going to help us a great deal. Commissioner Navarro.
Yeah, right now when you said the Brown Act, it just made me think of, like when I joined as a commissioner, I didn't know specifically like all the rules and the conflict of interest and just everything that entails the Brown Act. So maybe a quick presentation, especially since we have new commissioners, just kind of recapping and go over what we could do, can't do. Not to be long, just 10, 15 minutes. But.
That's perfect, because sitting here, I have no clue what I've been on a million committees, but how this one's run and what I am and am not allowed to do or say, and who I can talk, this is too loud, who I can talk to and who I can't, like that's important. And then if I was at the city council meeting on Wednesday to speak upon funding for a parade that we put on in February, and am I allowed to speak as a city, as a Parks and Recs commissioner? Do I even throw that in there? Do I not throw that in there? Just kind of the etiquette of what to be doing. We're sitting here, I have a good idea, I'm a fairly educated person, but that doesn't mean I know all the fancy things to do.
I will tell you, just my position has always been, I introduce myself, I tell you where I live, I tell you how I serve the city, and then I tell you that I'm there representing myself. Unless we've asked, that you all go to the meeting and say, push this park or whatever, I represent myself, but let them know that you are involved. I think understanding involvement is really, really important.
Yeah, I just spoke as a representative of that council that I'm on, the other council, and spoke from that position, but I should start throwing in the Parks and Rec things so they think, oh, well, they are here, they're around. I'm speaking for us, but no. I'm
No.
speaking on behalf of myself and my own duo.
When we supported pickleball a few years back, we spoke as a commission then to the council.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, I think we've got some stuff that we can work on out of that, so thank you very much. 6 hours. Turns out it's a 2-day thing, and you've got to stay overnight. Yeah. So, Commissioner Trent, do you want to talk about the recreation program fees a little bit?
So we had a good meeting last, 2 Thursdays ago. Travis unfortunately was absent, but he did get a recording of the meeting. We're pushing forward on trying to create a centralized kind of membership plan and also drilling down into the comprehensive fee schedule, which turns out not to be that comprehensive. It's missing a lot of programs. It's missing rental rates for different rooms. We're going basically into each facility and itemizing, what they have, because there's, the small room that you can rent or the larger room. There's no real descriptions to them. So we're actually creating lists of everything, what those rates currently are, where they really should be. And then I'm also still waiting on staff, and Vicky's not here, to get me some of the finalized numbers from finance about what the actual costs of each of these programs are without all the little additions the city has added in, so that we can do a true analysis and break down what the full cost recovery would have to be, and then apply our discounting to that. Where we are.
Questions or?
I do hope, I would say, we would be ready by January to be able to present at that meeting so that everybody has kind of the whole picture in front of them so that we can vote on it and hopefully get it in front of the city council in February or March, especially since that's when their budget meetings start. And this would definitely be a budget item because it involves income as well as cost. So we need to hopefully be there. And if we're doing this in February, it'd be a good time to kind of review and recap some of the points too.
My hope is that we will be presenting in February, because my concern is council may actually say, hey, could you guys go back and look at this and this point, and then we'd have time before their next meeting. And of course, with that, the ad hoc committee could work on it, not necessarily needing a meeting here, unless we need what we're doing to be approved. We'll just play a little bit, but we really, our commission, our group has said we really do want to be through with this in March. So that we can, I think part of action completion is get it, do it, make the recommendation, and eliminate the committee. So, yes, Commissioner Pace.
Just as a side note to that, it was kind of figured out that at some point, almost annually, we'll have to at least look at this to make sure whatever changes we have, whether they're working or not, whether that's a short little quip into it and look at the actual total numbers and see also if the city council is happy with those numbers, because a lot of it's based off of their approval. But it's going to take some review time. So although the ad hoc committee is hoping to be done by then, there's going to be some revisits to it, at least for the next couple of years as we drill down.
Yes, Commissioner Goodman.
So I'm curious, have you had any conversations about the collaboration with the school district and existing programs? Because I've heard a few things at school board meetings of some of the redefining of city programs and school programs.
We haven't yet. It would be my passion to have a single-threaded conversation with the involved group so that at one point in time there was a single message, because when you play telephone tag, what gets to some people is not complete, what gets to others is. So it is a passion for, I think, the three of us. I don't mean to speak for my partners, but Commissioner Bates.
As far as I understand, that specific thread of conversation and meeting with multiple people, not only from the city manager as well as itself, is still forthcoming. Has not happened yet, where they'll talk to all of us so that we can get our
No, it hasn't happened. And so, but my understanding is in August in 2018, for the school year, is that there'll be changes or there'll be some sort of integration. So what if we just request people from the school district to come and maybe do an introduction or talk with the commission? Or do you want it to just be in your program committee?
Doesn't have to be the program committee, but I am concerned if we meet with the school district without the conduits. And
I think I misspoke then. I meant that the meeting with school board members as well as David and everybody else would be brought to the commission, not to the fee program, so that all the issues there can be clarified and figure out where the
I
commission.
can't imagine you can make any recommendations in February if you don't know what those plans are.
They're leaving it very open-ended.
Okay.
But and my thought would be we're doing our fees based on the programs that we know that exist today. If somebody removes a program or adds a program, we'd have to look at adjusting the fee. But it's one of those things where at least I feel that we just need to fix things, and then we can fix the one. Comments or questions? Or I have to say, meetings are, I think, productive meetings where we're talking about some really stuff, and we're coming through, I think, resolutions or setting ourselves up to be successful with resolutions. So reports and requests, what I'd like to do is go around to each commissioner, because sometimes if we go back to somebody. So, Alan, do you have any
I would like to share with the commission about, went to breakfast with Santa that the Parks Department held a couple weeks ago. Commissioner Goodman was there, Commissioner Young was there. A wonderful run program, and we got to be seen. People knew who we were, but they had all kind of things, different stations for the kids to work with crafts, different stations to build things. The group that is working that, the employees, the parks people, they were excellent with working with all the students, the kids, and the parents that were there. It was just a really well-run day event. And, you know, I was proud to be part of the Parks Department with that group down there.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, seeing a family of 6 dressed in the same jammy suit, Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, and the 2 little kids, it was actually a little emotional to see them go up and see Santa Claus. It was phenomenal. It was such a good time. Commissioner Diaz.
Are you going to report on the? No, you have the notes. So we met, our ad hoc pickleball committee met. So Carol will give you the rundown. And also, who is it at the district? Are you talking Dr. Hanson? I have questions about all the programming and all this stuff.
It's Superintendent and James Williamson is my understanding of who are meeting, and I don't know if it's their 2-on-2 where they'll actually meet with David Reddy and maybe someone from the council. But I do believe it's happening. You know, these conversations are at that level. Vicky's not here for us to check in to see if she has any updates. But that's why I had asked if it's come down yet, and have we
That's
gotten any
stuff
information?
we should know about, period. Not just be sitting here wanting.
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard of any of that, so.
Right, and the superintendent asked me, you know, and I said, no, I've only heard it at school board meetings. I haven't been informed yet, so.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Pace?
Is this right now?
Armstrong?
Yeah, I'd like just to note for the record, the passing of Michelle Meeson, sustainability office, and all that she did for our parks, and she's a big booster of recreation programs and urban forest inventory. The artistic bike racks we see in the parks are her brainchild, along with the Arts Commission. The trees. There's so many things. You know, just try. You know, the first recycling containers we have in our parks, which was a pilot program. That's something we need to revisit. She was able to get 10 containers in the parks, and so many things that she did for the city and for Parks and Recreation.
For the city and the world. Commissioner Navarro?
So we recently got photos of areas from the city, from Vicky, of that we're going to consider as the ad hoc committee of leash. Armstrong is back in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Commissioner Craig?
Jody and Carol and I met as the subcommittee, which Carol will be reporting on. I also wanted to report that I was interviewed yesterday and I was accepted to be a new replacement on Measure J, so I'll be leaving this commission. I've been asked to stay on the commission till I'm replaced, which will be as soon as they start working on it, the 2 liaison people. I sat in on the first interviews of the Measure J Commission a number of years ago, when there were 92 of them applying for the 9 seats. And I watched them and observed and watched the meetings, and I decided that this was a time that I wanted to be involved in it. So I was interviewed yesterday. I was called. I'll be voted on January the 3rd. And I'm glad to be part of all of this, and I'll be here until I'm replaced. I'm one of 2 new people.
Actually, I'd like to say that you have been a great mentor. So much for every committee that you're a part of. I'm glad that I get to continue to work with you on the police advisory board. It'd also be nice to have a mentor just next door at Measure J, who might be thinking about us. And that would be very, very
Thank you.
nice. We really appreciate everything you've done for us.
Thank you.
It's been a lot. So,
It reminds me of the always think of what's best for the person, not what's best for me. So Mazel tov, I wish you luck, and you're going to be great. And
Thank you.
I'll miss you. And you won't be at our retreat. So when I asked you, boy, that was a hard one for you to answer, huh? Okay, so yes, we have the maps, thank you, and we'll meet, and we'll be having something to report back next month for Dog Park. And then I just wanted to follow up with the United Cerebral Palsy, that there was a suggestion that maybe we do another park event with the kids, so I reached out to Greg and asked him if he would be in a position to entertain that. They said they did not have the capacity and would decline doing anything right now. And I don't know how long right now is, but I did reach out, I spoke to him, he loved it and is unable to do anything right now. And that's, and again, congratulations on Breakfast with Santa. Shocking. Like, wow. Like, it was transformed. People were transformed. Families were transformed. We have a very diverse community. Like, wow. It really was right there in front of us. I had an absolutely wonderful time. You guys did a great job.
Commissioner Davis?
Pickleball subcommittee met together on Saturday, and options that may be of interest for Parks and Recs. So the first one is to wait until the funds are raised to build more courts. That would be option number one. Option number two would be to explore the option of the pickleball community matching funds to convert tennis court number 3 at Demuth Park. The tennis court at Desert Highland Unity Center.
Commissioner Goodman?
So I like the idea of actually bringing pickleball to a community that doesn't have it, especially if a court's not being used. That's a great idea. I'm curious to know, I had a pickleball conversation at the tennis club by Spencer's, and they have 2 courts that they have converted or that are courts they can interchange, and they actually have a league. They have people who they are playing there, and they're a part of a league. And it really had me wonder if we've done a survey of the different cities that are where it's obvious we exchange community, right? We have our residents go to other cities and participate. We have people come to our city and participate. And I'm just wondering, like, how many pickleball courts are there, you know, in our sister cities, in our city, and what is the size of the community? And like we did this with the skate park, to find out that we have the most challenging skate park. And so kids from all over the valley want to come to our skate park because it's the best skate park in the valley. So, I mean, you know, are there enough pickleball courts in the valley? You know, I'm just kind of curious.
Commissioner Pace?
Now, on that, when I first got involved with the commission, pickleball was a topic at one of the meetings that I was sitting out in the audience for. And the Pickleball Association actually has a list of different courts, whether they're public or private, across the entire valley. So it's a bit difficult to drill down through, but if you find all the locations and everything, you can actually do the math. And right now, the most parks, or the most pickleball courts that are public in any city in Coachella Valley is a count of 12. But Palm Desert and us share that. We have technically 12 public courts, so do they. We're at the top of the line. There's a lot more private that are done in smaller communities, retirement communities and stuff like that, but I don't know if you'd want that information, but it is available there if you want, you know, a breakdown.
It's interesting that you mention that because we have pickleball courts within the Four Seasons. However, you can only entertain 6 guests. So it isn't as if you could have any sort of a mini competition there, because there's an absolute limit to the number of people who can come through the gates bearing my name to play. So it has been interesting. We also have a wealth of knowledge in the ambassador, Dean Mangione, who's hands-on any information relative to subcommittee needs his contact information. Let me know. Tomorrow morning.
I mean, it just makes me think. So, on that information, if Palm Springs has 12 and Palm Desert has 12, and there are a lot in the private communities, and the cities in between really don't, do we want to be the city that has 18? And, what does it look like from a cost ratio to really maintain those courts and, being able to work with the clubs and so forth? So I don't know if that's being looked at, but it came up for me as a question.
Commissioner Craig?
Jasmine, I want to ask a question. Maybe I don't know if you can answer this or not, if this is a Vicky question. When we voted and went to the city to do the pickleball courts, we started with 1. And the cost of it was to repaint it, resurface it, and put in 4, drill out and put in the 4, was $10,000 at that time. And then a year later, we did the second one. Is it bidded out and priced where, the reason I'm asking is I live at our HOA had tennis courts, and they converted one of the courts 4 months ago into pickleball. 3 years ago, the residents voted no. 3 years later, they voted yes. But I found out that our court wasn't regulation, so we were only able to put 3 pickleball courts on it. And it cost a third of what? It cost $3,500, and we paid $10,000. Is that because the city has bids that has to be going through those processes, or is that something that you can address?
I can tell you that the city is required anything over 25. If the project was just over 25, then Vicki had to go out and get multiple bids for that project, and the city will then take the lowest bid to complete the project.
Got it.
I don't know specifically about the project you're discussing. I could definitely find that out, but I do know that the city process for bidding it out is anything over $2,500.
The reason I asked is because when Carol brought up and showed us, Jody and I, pictures of the tennis court at Desert Highlands, she said it's not even being used at all. No net, nothing. And since we all were invited to go to the community center to watch pickleball being played there with seniors and young people, which was an amazing thing to see, it was to me a no-brainer that should be done, because that's a community in another section, but that's an area that if it's already existing, then it just means surfacing and putting in for it. And that's something that we advocated would be a really important thing to address as a commission to another part of our community today. But I just felt that the costs could be brought down. I don't know. I understand you have to. Is it 3 bids you have to have, or
You have to have at least 3 bids.
at least 3 bids to go in?
I think also there's a baseline. There's also a baseline on insurance provision. I think you've got to be insured for over $1 million, be able to operate on city property, which may change the flavor of
It does eliminate quite a few vendors. Most of the time, our insurance will cover.
That may not be the case with some of the HOAs. They may
Right.
have
That answers the question. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yes, Commissioner Navarro.
I think regardless of, the options you mentioned, I think it's a good idea to engage the clubs and organizations in fundraising, because it seems like there's no money anywhere, and we're just pulling it out of the air, and it could be a collaborative effort with them, and who knows, they might have a lot of great potential in fundraising, and it might be more than just one court. Maybe they could raise more money, and we just don't know. So I think regardless of what option we follow, I think we need to get them.
That was our feeling too, the 3 of us, to get the
The
community to
last
raise
time
the
they
money.
came,
Right.
they brought it up that they could possibly come up with some funds.
I'm so loud, I, honest to God, don't need that. Or that we match, you know, that they match, if they were to come up with this much, could we match? Something like that where it's not coming from us here or from the city, so that was a huge part of our conversation.
Well, and I can't make any promises, but my thought is approach what you'd like to have. And that may be 2 of these instead of 1, and come up with a dollar amount and let us see what we can do. I personally think that we might be able to raise funds outside of the city, but we need to get the costs, like the conversion costs, or exactly how you want to handle it. I know I looked at once we talked to the pickleball players and the tennis players, I learned so much about the fact that they do not want to be next to each other. As much as we thought paddles,
Yeah.
balls, rackets, come on.
We discussed that too.
Yeah, we did.
It was really a learning process. But I'm still not willing to ask people from Duluth, and I hope you aren't, to ask people from Duluth to drive 15 minutes to go to Ruth Hardy Park to play tennis. I would hope that we might be able to, again, raise funds to create 2 tennis courts at Duluth someplace. Again, ideas are plentiful, money is not, and we'd have to go out and see what we could raise. Like that you're looking at the aspect of bringing more opportunity to anything else, Commissioner Davis?
Thank you.
Real quickly, and actually I didn't realize, discuss this through fruition, but what I'd like to throw out is commissioners riding in parades. We see it on occasion. I personally, I know it's very close to the parade in February, but I would love you to think about, discuss it in our January meeting, whether or not you would all be willing to ride in the Black History Month parade if cost and find some sort of vehicle that I think we could get donated to ride us through. I don't know what the costs are for.
There isn't a fee to be in the parade. And then we ask the dealerships to donate cars for the city council members and things to ride in, so that could be a source of a place, you know, they'll donate like Crystal Chrysler or Jessup, or I can't even think of who they are now up there in Kansas City, but they donate cars for us, so we pick them up. And actually, is it Ball Automotive? They might have done it last year. Anyway, Roman, yeah, so
I sort of envisioned something where we could all be together in a vehicle. And
I'll be checking people in
some
at the
ideas.
parade. I'll wave at you. But, no, I can maybe catch up, but
Is the date not the same as
it's
the
the
retreat?
last,
Or
no.
Oh, okay.
That's the gala.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
That was my groan. The Black History Parade is the last Saturday in February, which is February 24th. The parade in Town Fair, check-in would be at 10, and the parade kicks off at 11 and ends at Francis Stevens Park, and then the Town Fair, then the rest of the celebration occurs down there.
Well, I would just ask that you all think about it, and if it is of interest to you, and I hope it would be, then we could ride together that day. And I just think it would be fun. And I would ask that you think about it in sort of the vein that Mr. Armstrong talked about, visibility and being involved in things, and this being the first of many opportunities to. So that's all I had. Staff updates? Well, I'd like to adjourn today's meeting and wish you all very happy holidays. We will meet again on January 16th at 2:30, and thank you all very much.